The unexpected arrival of the stars above Earth were peaceful. For centuries, humans had watched the night sky, wondering if they were alone in the universe. But that peace was shattered one night. The sky was no longer just a vast expanse of twinkling stars. It was filled with alien ships, massive and dark, looming over Earth like giants. The first sign came in the form of a bright flash. It lit up the sky for miles, causing people to look up in confusion. The flash was followed by a deep rumble like thunder, shaking buildings and rattling windows. Then came the roar of engines, heavy and distant. The people of Earth didn't know what was coming, but they knew one thing for sure: something big was on its way. Across the globe, people watched in awe and fear. News outlets scrambled to report, but all they could do was show the ships, vast fleets of them, dark, shaped like nothing humans had ever seen before. They hovered in Earth's atmosphere like a storm, just waiting to strike. Governments around the world began to react, but they were unsure of what to do. This was no ordinary threat. This was something new, something unlike anything they had ever seen before. As the ships hovered, their size became even more apparent. They were not just ships. They were cities in the sky, each one bigger than the largest human aircraft carrier. Their sleek, metallic surfaces gleamed under the sunlight. They looked like they had come from another world, and they had. These ships didn't belong to Earth. They didn't belong to any civilization humans had ever encountered. And yet, they were here, in Earth's sky, casting their shadows over the planet below. The alien ships didn't just appear without warning. They had been coming for weeks, making their way slowly but steadily across the galaxy. But as they entered Earth's atmosphere, they expected no resistance. They had conquered countless planets before. Earth, to them, was just another prize to claim. The aliens thought humans were weak, primitive creatures. They thought Earth was a backward, insignificant planet, unworthy of attention. The aliens, known as the Jurok, had a long history of conquest. They were ruthless warriors with a single purpose: to dominate every planet they encountered. They had the technology, the firepower, and the strength to crush entire civilizations. Nothing had stood in their way. No army had ever been strong enough to challenge them. Earth, to them, was just another easy target. But as they descended closer to the planet, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't cower. They didn't panic. Instead, they mobilized. All over the world, governments sprang into action, calling upon their militaries to prepare for war. Soldiers, pilots, and engineers worked around the clock, readying Earth's defenses. The Jurok were not prepared for this. They had expected Earth to bow before their might. But Earth was not a planet to be conquered so easily. As the Jurok fleet came closer, they sent down their first wave of ships. These ships were smaller than the massive ones in orbit, but still terrifyingly advanced. They were sleek, fast, and armed with devastating weapons. They hit Earth's atmosphere with terrifying speed, heading for major cities around the globe. Human cities that had once seemed so safe now felt vulnerable. But the people of Earth weren't about to give up without a fight. The world's military forces had been trained for decades, preparing for a war they never thought would come. The suddenness of the alien arrival had caught them off guard, but not completely unprepared. The first wave of alien ships was met with Earth's best defenses. Fighter jets flew into the sky, their engines roaring as they locked onto the incoming threats. Anti-aircraft missiles were fired, creating a deadly wall of explosions in the sky. The alien ships were powerful, but they had underestimated the will of humanity. As Earth's forces launched their counterattacks, the Jurok were shocked. The humans fought back with a strength and resilience that was not expected. They had never seen such a coordinated effort from a species so primitive. The Jurok commanders, who had once laughed at the thought of Earth's resistance, were now forced to take the humans seriously. From their command centers, the Jurok watched in disbelief. The first wave of their ships had been knocked out of the sky by Earth's advanced missile systems. Fighter jets engaged the smaller alien craft in dogfights above major cities, their weapons flashing in the sky. Humans were fighting back with everything they had, and they were proving to be a much tougher opponent than the Jurok had ever imagined. The Jurok commanders quickly realized their mistake. They had thought that Earth was a weak and unworthy target. But now, they were facing a species that was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As the first wave of attacks continued, the Jurok began to question their plan. The humans, they realized, were not just survivors. They were warriors. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear: Earth wasn't going down without a fight. And the Jurok were about to learn that humans were not a species to be underestimated. The arrival of the alien fleet had sparked a conflict that would change the course of history. What the Jurok didn't realize was that the war they were starting would soon turn into something far more than they ever expected. The human resistance was just beginning. And with every passing moment, the aliens were starting to understand that they had made a terrible mistake by underestimating Earth. Earth's hidden power. As the battle raged on high above Earth's surface, the Jurok fleet quickly realized they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The alien invaders had come to conquer and were prepared to wipe out any form of resistance, but they hadn't expected the humans to fight back with such ferocity. They had expected Earth's forces to scatter in fear as their own warships descended from the sky. Instead, Earth's military began to organize a counterattack that was nothing short of extraordinary. Fighter jets took to the sky with precision and speed that surprised even the most battle-hardened Jurok generals. But the humans didn't stop there. Ground forces mobilized across the globe. Soldiers moved into position, their weapons ready. They set up defenses around the world's most vital cities. The Jurok thought they were merely an obstacle to be crushed with ease. But what they had underestimated was the fierce determination of a species that had faced countless wars throughout its history. The aliens had underestimated the humans' ability to unite as one. The truth began to sink in slowly but surely. Earth's greatest strength was not just in its technology or its military might. It was in the unity that tied its people together. It was a strength the Jurok had never seen before in all the planets they had conquered. The unity of Earth's people gave them an unexpected edge as Earth's forces worked together to fight back. The aliens began to question their previous assumptions. They thought of Earth as a primitive world, but they didn't understand the history that had shaped the humans into the warriors they were today. Over the centuries, humanity had fought wars both within its own borders and against enemies from beyond its planet. Each battle had taught them new lessons. Each conflict had forced them to adapt and evolve. What the Jurok didn't know was that every war had forged Earth into something powerful. The humans had learned to fight for their survival, and they had perfected it in the most brutal ways possible. The alien fleet's commanders began to realize their mistake. Earth's defense systems were more advanced than they had been led to believe. Missiles streaked across the sky in fiery trails, taking down alien ships that had once seemed invincible. The Jurok had thought that humanity was weak, but in reality humans had always been the underdogs, and it was in that role that they had thrived. The alien commanders began to confer with each other, wondering how their plan could have gone so wrong. They had been sure that Earth would offer no resistance at all, that it would fall to their superior technology and firepower. Yet here they were in the middle of a war they had not prepared for. Every day, the humans grew more skilled and more determined. Earth's airspace was filled with the roar of human aircraft weaving through alien ship fire with skill and precision. It became clear to the Jurok that they were up against something different. Earth's resistance was not just fighting with weapons. It was fighting with heart. Every soldier, every pilot, every citizen was willing to do whatever it took to protect their home. The alien fleet soon found itself in unfamiliar territory. Instead of an easy victory, they were faced with the unexpected challenge of an entire world fighting back with everything it had. The humans were not just resisting, they were adapting their tactics to match and outsmart the Jurok. At every turn, the aliens had expected to encounter a world full of fear, But what they had found was a species that was not afraid to fight, and even more shockingly, a species that would not give up no matter how insurmountable the odds seemed. The Jurok commanders watched as their once confident fleet was forced to retreat and regroup. They realized they had made a serious mistake. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving under pressure. Every mistake the Jurok made only made the humans more dangerous and more resolved. Their determination became the aliens' greatest fear. It wasn't just the humans' weapons that made them so dangerous, it was their will to survive. It was the way they had learned from each battle and used it to make themselves stronger in the face of an enemy that had once thought itself invincible. Earth had a secret power, one that the Jurok could not have predicted. It was the power of unity, the power of relentless determination, and the power of a species that had fought for its survival since the dawn of its existence. The Jurok thought they could conquer Earth with ease, but now they were beginning to understand that they had made a grave mistake. The humans were not weak. They were not afraid. They were gods of war, forged in the fires of countless conflicts, and this was a war the Jurok would soon regret. Starting every passing minute showed the aliens that they were not dealing with a primitive species. They were dealing with a race of warriors who had faced death time and time again, and had always risen stronger. And now Earth was showing the Jurok just how deadly that strength could be. History of war. The Jurok commanders, once full of confidence, were now questioning everything they thought they knew about Earth as they watched the human forces fight back with strength and unity they had never seen before. The more they battled, the more the Jurok realized that this planet had a history that had shaped its people in ways the invaders could not understand. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting with the weight of centuries of war etched into their very bones. This wasn't just a battle between two species. It was a clash of civilizations, one built on the constant struggle for survival, the other believing in the superiority of its technology and power. But the truth about Earth's history began to unfold in pieces as the Jurok delved deeper into Earth's past. They saw wars that spanned across time and continents, wars that shaped the very fabric of human society, wars that made humanity stronger with every conflict. At first the Jurok thought the humans' battles were mere chaos, but as they studied their history, they realized these wars were not random. They were the crucible in which humanity had been tested and tempered over and over again. Each war had taught the humans something new. Each loss had been a lesson learned, and each victory had shown them the value of resilience. When the Jurok first set foot on Earth, they thought they were facing a primitive species. They thought humans were no different from the countless others. They had conquered a species that would bend under the weight of an invincible force. But what the Jurok didn't know was that humans had never been defeated by a stronger army or superior firepower. Instead, they had been forged by their wars against each other, against the elements, and against the world around them. The history of Earth was not just a tale of conflict. It was a story of survival. Humans had fought wars not only against other civilizations, but against their own nature. They had fought to create order out of chaos, to shape a world that was constantly trying to tear itself apart from within. They had faced plagues, famines, and natural disasters that had wiped out entire civilizations. But each time, humanity had risen from the ashes as if by instinct. They had learned that the only way to survive was to adapt to change and to fight back against the odds. The Jurok fleet had no idea how deep this history ran. When they first arrived, they thought the human resistance was simply a reaction to a foreign threat. But the more they saw, the more they realized this was not the first time Earth had faced destruction, and it wouldn't be the last. The humans had fought wars long before they had ever left their own planet, and now they were showing the Jurok exactly what they were capable of. The battles they fought were not just battles of weapons and technology. They were battles of willpower, of resourcefulness, and of the sheer determination to live. The Jurok had thought themselves the ultimate conquerors, but now they were learning that Earth was no easy prey. Their advanced weapons and ships were being slowly worn down by a species that knew how to fight and knew how to adapt every human soldier. Every fighter jet pilot, and every civilian who picked up a weapon brought with them the weight of this history their ancestors had passed down to them, the lessons learned from every war, every battle, every hardship endured the Jurok had underestimated Earth's power, but now they were starting to see the truth behind it. Humanity had built a culture that thrived on the lessons of war, and it was these lessons that had turned Earth into a living weapon, a weapon that no one, not even the Jurok, could have predicted. As the Jurok commanders watched their fleet falter under Earth's unexpected defense, they began to realize that they were not facing a primitive species. They were facing a species that had been shaped by conflict and was capable of wielding that power with frightening precision. Earth had been built by war, and it was this history, this legacy of survival, that would ensure the humans would never go down without a fight. The Jurok had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the true power of Earth, the true power of humanity, and now they would learn that this was a fight. They could never win the power of unity. As the battle between humans and the Jurok continued to intensify, the true strength of Earth's forces became clear to the alien invaders. They had expected to face a fractured world divided by differences of culture, language, and politics. But what they saw instead was something they had never anticipated. The humans were united in a way that no enemy they had ever encountered had been able to achieve, and it was this unity that made them stronger than any single army or fleet could ever be. The Jurok had arrived on Earth, expecting to find a planet ripe for the taking. They believed humanity would crumble under the weight of a superior enemy. But the moment their ships began to descend, it became clear that they had underestimated the human spirit. Humans, who for centuries had been divided by borders, ideologies, and conflicts, now stood together in the face of a common threat. Soldiers from every nation fought side by side. Engineers and scientists worked together to develop new technologies to combat the Jurok's advanced weaponry. Civilians who had never seen a weapon in their life picked up rifles, stood guard, and protected their homes. This was not the world the Jurok had expected to find. This was not the world they could conquer so easily. In every corner of Earth, people came together in ways that had never been seen before. Neighbors helped each other, strangers fought alongside one another, and families stood united even in the face of death. The Jurok watched in disbelief as cities that had once been divided by conflict and rivalry now stood strong against their invasion. The power of unity was something they had never encountered before. It was a force that transcended race, religion, and nationality, something far more powerful than any single weapon or fleet. Humanity had discovered that its greatest weapon was not its technology or military might, but its ability to come together as one when faced with a common enemy. Humans had learned to look beyond their differences and to focus on the survival of their species. As the Jurok continued to attack, they were met with an unrelenting defense. Humanity fought back not as individual nations or races, but as one planet with one goal: to survive. The Jurok commanders began to realize that they were facing something they had never seen before. This wasn't just a species defending itself, it was a species that had unlocked its greatest potential through unity. They had always believed that the key to victory was power, but now they were seeing that true power came not from advanced weapons or technology, but from the unbreakable bond that connected every human being. Every person on Earth fought for the same thing: the preservation of their world and their future. The alien invaders were no longer fighting against separate nations or factions. They were fighting against humanity itself, and this fight had no clear end. The Jurok had failed to understand the one thing that made Earth so dangerous. The humans didn't just fight for survival, they fought for each other. Every human who stood on the front lines was not just defending their own home, they were defending the homes of their fellow humans across the world. This collective spirit made them stronger than any single army. It was a force that could not be shattered by weapons or firepower. As the Jurok fleet pressed forward, they found their resources dwindling. They had underestimated how quickly the humans adapted to their technology, how easily they turned Earth's own resources into weapons. They had underestimated the human will to survive. When every human's future was at stake, the Jurok commanders were beginning to understand that this battle was not going to be won by strength alone. It would be won by the unity that had been formed across the earth. The alien invaders began to panic. They had never fought against a species that could unite so completely, so effortlessly. The idea that people who had once fought among themselves could now stand together in such harmony and strength was beyond their understanding. The unity that had been built over generations through war, hardship, and survival was now being unleashed with deadly precision on their battlefield. The Jurok realized too late that they had chosen the wrong planet to invade. They had come expecting an easy conquest, but instead, they had found a species that had learned the most important lesson of all. It was not the strength of weapons or technology that made them dangerous. It was the power of unity, and it was this power that would ensure Earth's victory. The Jurok were beginning to feel the full force of humanity's resolve, and as the tides of battle began to shift, they realized that this was a fight they could never win. Humans strike back. The Jurok had come to Earth expecting to face a world that would fall beneath the weight of their overwhelming power. But what they didn't anticipate was the sheer tenacity of humanity's response. Every passing moment revealed something new about Earth's inhabitants, something that made the alien invaders increasingly uneasy. Humanity's resistance was not just about fighting with weapons. It was about fighting with everything they had: their minds, their hearts, their spirit. The humans were no longer just offenders. They were now aggressors, and this sudden shift in tactics took the Jurok by surprise. It was as though the very nature of humanity had awakened with an intensity the aliens couldn't comprehend. Humans began to strike back not just with military might, but with intelligence and ingenuity. Their scientists and engineers, previously seen as non-combatants, became crucial players in the war effort. Earth's brightest minds worked tirelessly day and night to reverse engineer alien technology. They understood that in order to survive, they would have to adapt the Jurok's weapons to their own advantage, and they did so with astonishing speed. Earth's forces learned to outmaneuver the Jurok with tactics that used their own technology against them. Fighter jets flew circles around Jurok warships using their superior knowledge of Earth's atmosphere to avoid their weapons' fire. The humans had perfected the art of asymmetrical warfare, hitting the alien fleet in ways they could never have anticipated. Earth's ground forces were no different as the Jurok moved across the planet. They thought they would easily crush any resistance they found on the surface, but they quickly learned that Earth's terrain worked to the humans' advantage. Cities were turned into fortresses, and every street became a battleground where guerrilla fighters used their knowledge of the land to their full advantage. The Jurok found themselves unable to control the cities they had invaded because the humans knew the landscape like the back of their hand. While the Jurok fought in unfamiliar surroundings, the humans used their cities and forests as weapons. They were masters of the terrain, while the Jurok were dependent on their advanced technology. But technology alone could not win this war. Humanity had something that the Jurok could not replicate. The human spirit was something the aliens had underestimated, and now they were facing the full force of its soldiers. Once thought to be weak and untrained, now fought with the desperation of a species that refused to give up. Every civilian who took up arms added to the tide of resistance, and in every battle, every clash between the two forces, the Jurok felt the power of Earth's resolve. The humans' fight was not only for survival, it was for everything they had built: their homes, their families, their future. The Jurok had underestimated the depth of this commitment, and now they were paying the price as each new strike hit. Their forces, their confidence began to crack. Their superior technology was no match for the sheer unpredictability of humanity. The Jurok fleet began to realize that they could not keep up with Earth's rapidly evolving tactics, and each time they thought they had won a small victory, they were struck by an even stronger retaliation. The battle shifted in humanity's favor, and with every passing day, the Jurok found themselves losing ground. The humans were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. They had tapped into a well of strength they didn't know they had. And now the Jurok were the ones on the defensive. Their fleet, once thought to be invincible, began to crumble as Earth's weapon systems and fighter squadrons gained the upper hand. The Jurok commanders were left scrambling to adjust their strategy. But it was too late. Humanity had learned to fight not just with their weapons, but with their hearts and their minds. And in this war, it was clear that the humans were far more dangerous than the Jurok had ever imagined. As the tide of battle turned, and the Jurok found themselves retreating, Earth's forces didn't stop. They pressed on relentlessly, showing the invaders that Earth was not a planet to be conquered without a fight. They were gods of war, and the Jurok were about to learn the full extent of humanity's might, the truth revealed as the battle raged on, and the Jurok fleet found itself retreating in the face of humanity's unexpected strength. Something deep within Earth's history began to surface. A secret buried for centuries began to reveal itself to those who were brave enough to seek it. The humans had always been a species of mystery to the stars, but what the Jurok didn't realize was that Earth had once been home to a far more powerful race of beings. Long before humans walked the planet, the discovery came by accident as a group of Earth soldiers stumbled upon an ancient relic while scavenging through a long-abandoned war zone hidden beneath the rubble of a forgotten battlefield. They uncovered a long-forgotten temple that had remained untouched for centuries. Inside this temple was an artifact unlike anything Earth had ever seen. It was a weapon, but not a weapon in the way that the Jurok thought of them. It wasn't designed to fire beams or missiles. It was something far more powerful, something that resonated with a long-lost energy deep within the planet itself. The soldiers brought the artifact back to Earth's top scientists who, in turn, connected it to old records of human history that had long been dismissed as myth. They discovered that this artifact was no ordinary object. It was a key to a forgotten truth about humanity's origins. Earth was not just a random planet. It was once home to an ancient civilization, far more advanced and powerful than the Jurok could have ever imagined. The humans, it turned out, were not just survivors of their own world's wars. They were descendants of a forgotten race of warriors who had once ruled the galaxy. These ancient ancestors had been known as the Tuareg. They were a race of beings who had discovered the secret to wielding the power of war itself. They had forged an empire that spanned the stars, conquering worlds and bringing entire civilizations to their knees. But something had happened to the Tuareg. They had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only remnants of their once great civilization, hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth. And when humanity emerged from its primal origins, it had inherited more than just the will to survive. It had inherited the legacy of the Tuareg, a race that had been shaped by war and mastery over it. But the humans had lost all memory of this ancient past over time. The true nature of their history had been buried beneath layers of myth and legend, only to be rediscovered now in the middle of an alien invasion. As the truth began to unfold, the Jurok were stunned. The humans were not just a random species. They were the descendants of a race of godlike warriors who had once commanded the stars, and now they were awakening this ancient power that had been dormant for millennia. The artifact was the key to unlocking their true potential, and the humans were beginning to understand the depth of their inherited strength. The Jurok had thought they were the masters of war, but what they didn't know was that they were facing the descendants of a civilization that had once been even greater than their own. The Jurok commanders quickly realized that their conquest of Earth had just become far more complicated than they could have ever imagined. They had thought the humans were a primitive species unworthy of their attention, but now they knew better. The humans were not just fighters, they were the heirs to a warrior race that had once ruled the galaxy, and that power was now rising again on Earth as the humans unlocked the secrets of their ancient ancestors. The tide of the war shifted yet again. Jurok fleet was no longer just facing a species fighting to survive. They were facing a species that had tapped into a deep well of strength and power they had no idea existed. The humans' newfound Knowledge of their own past changed everything. They were no longer just reacting to the invasion. They were preparing to strike back with the full force of their ancestors' might. They had the power of gods of war flowing through their veins, and now the Jurok were about to see just what humanity was capable of when they fought with the strength of their ancient legacy behind them. The battle was no longer just about survival, it was about reclaiming a lost power, and the Jurok, despite their vast resources and technology, had no idea how to stop it. The truth had been revealed, and with it came a force unlike any the universe had ever seen. The humans were not just fighting for their future, they were fighting to reclaim their past, and with that power behind them, nothing could stand in their way. Victory or destruction, the battle had raged for weeks now, and the Jurok fleet, once so confident in their superiority, was beginning to falter under the relentless power of humanity's resistance. Earth had become a battlefield like no other, a place where technology, willpower, and the very legacy of an ancient warrior race collided in ways the invaders never imagined. The humans, armed with the knowledge of their forgotten ancestors, had unlocked a strength that had once been lost to time, and now they were using that power not just to fight back, but to take the fight directly to the Jurok fleet. The final confrontation was drawing near. The Jurok fleet had already been severely weakened by Earth's tenacity and innovation, but they refused to surrender. They had never known defeat, and their pride as conquerors drove them to press on even as they found themselves surrounded by enemies they couldn't understand. Each alien ship that was taken down, each soldier that fell, only seemed to fuel the humans' resolve. It was no longer just about defense or survival, it was about domination. The Jurok began to realize that their invincibility was a myth. Humanity had fought back using everything at their disposal, every tactic, every resource, every piece of knowledge that had been passed down through generations. They had learned not only to fight their battles, but to adapt them to the strengths and weaknesses of their enemies. The humans had turned the war into something far more dangerous than the Jurok had ever imagined. This wasn't just an invasion, it was the resurrection of a forgotten power that now had the momentum of an entire world behind it. The final assault began as Earth's forces launched a coordinated strike across every front. The humans hit the Jurok fleet with a wave of firepower that was both unexpected and overwhelming. Fighter jets soared through the sky like a swarm, dodging enemy fire and striking with precision. Earth's newly developed weapons were unleashed, turning the Jurok's technology against them. Missiles, bombs, and energy pulses tore through the alien fleet. The Jurok commanders tried to regroup, but it was too late. The humans were everywhere. The Jurok had come to Earth believing that they could conquer it, but what they didn't understand was that Earth's true strength lay in its people and their unbreakable unity. It was that unity that allowed the humans to withstand every assault, every hardship, every disaster they had ever faced, and now, united under one cause, they were unstoppable. The Jurok fleet, once feared and untouchable, was being torn apart by the relentless human assault. Each blow dealt to the invaders was a reminder that Earth had always been more than just a planet. It was a living force, driven by the strength of its people. The alien invaders, who had once believed themselves to be the gods of war, now found themselves facing the full wrath of humanity's legacy. As the final Jurok ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the skies above Earth cleared for the first time in weeks. The battle was over. The Jurok had lost, their invasion had failed, and humanity stood victorious. But the victory came at a cost. The war had taken its toll on both sides, but Earth's determination had proven to be the deciding factor. The humans had fought not only for their survival, but for something greater. They had fought to reclaim their lost history and to remind the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Jurok commanders, their fleet in ruins, retreated into the darkness of space, defeated and humiliated. They had learned the hard way that Earth was not just another planet to conquer, it was a world full of warriors, forged by centuries of struggle and shaped by the very wars they had fought within their own species. The humans were gods of war, not by birthright, but by choice, by strength, and by the lessons learned from every battle fought and every enemy. Overcome as Earth began the slow process of rebuilding, the people who had once feared that they were outmatched now stood united. Stronger than ever before, they had faced the greatest challenge their world had ever known, and they had come out. On top, their victory was not just a triumph of arms, but a reminder that humanity's true power lay in its unity and resolve. Earth was not just a planet, it was a force to be reckoned with. And now, as the stars once again glimmered in the night sky, all who looked upon it knew the truth: humanity was not just a species to survive, it was a species that would forever shape the future of the galaxy.